Good afternoon, everyone. This is Marty Durden on Step Up, and we are so glad to have you step in today and listen as we talk about our faith and sports and life here. Today, we are so blessed to have one of my most respected colleagues, an esteemed colleague, Dr. Tim Rice. We met, I don't know how, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe, Tim, and have been we hit it off. I mean, sometimes you run into people and you just have this automatic connection, and that's what we did with Dr. Rice. And he is an old basketball coach like me, and a college professor just like me. And so we are just going to have a great little conversation today here, just the two of us. And thanks for joining us, Dr. Rice.
Well, Dr. Durden, thank you so very much for asking me to be a guest. It's kind of weird to be a guest on a podcast, having been actually interviewing you for the Holding a Ladder in Sport and Leadership podcast. I've been a guest on other podcasts, but it's always different to be the person who's being asked the questions as opposed to asking them.
That's right. I remember you asked me a few years ago on Holding the Ladder, and that was actually my first ever podcast just a few years ago. And that just kind of got me, I got to admit, that was the little push I think I needed to get started in this business. And I appreciate that. I owe you one on that one. So,
well, I can share. Yeah, I can share a little bit about how I got my push into podcasting. My late wife, Candy, I lost her January 27th of 2022. The greatest champion for me in my life. And she, one day, it was right as COVID was about to get going, and or actually had been going for a little bit. And she said, "Tim, I think you'd be great at podcasting." And I'm like, "Are you serious?" And she's like, "Sure, I think you'd be wonderful." And so I started thinking about it in December of 2020 and got going in January of 2021 with the Holding Ladder in Sport and Leadership podcast. And, we've had 93 episodes so far, of course, one being the pride and legend of Attapulgis, Georgia, home of Fuller's Earth, maybe a little more important to the town than you, Dr. Durden, but getting her push and believing in me helped me be able to get into it. And I've had a lot of incredible guests, you, of course, being one of them. And it's been a lot of fun. I've had a lot of people from all over the world, former players of mine. It's been a lot of fun for me to learn in all the episodes, something new.
It is. I just think that in our profession of coaching, and now us both teaching coaches and mentoring coaches, this idea of relationships is just, you can't get away from it. We just lean on our friends. I guess our profession, sports, is just so relationship centered. We all have this dependency on each other. We end up not necessarily playing for wins, but playing for that teammates. And so I think we just naturally have this affinity to be teammates and make friends.
Yeah, well, an interesting story related to that. Back in 1991, when I was a student athlete at what was then known as Mobile College, now known as University of Mobile, and an NAI institution in the Mobile area, I had a roommate that had worked at a summer camp in New York State in the Adirondack Park, a guy named Dave Sturban. And he's like, "Hey, would you like to go to Racket Lake camps in New York State this summer?" It was summer of 1991. And I'm like, "Sure, why not?" I was this kid from South Alabama, and I thought, well, it'd be great to be able to go meet some new people, see a different part of the country I'd never seen. So I jumped in my 1983 Toyota Tercel and I drove all the way up Interstate 81, all the way to Binghamton, New York, and then straight up Highway 8, New York State Highway 8, and, to camp. At camp, I met a gentleman by the name of Kieran Murphy, who was an Irish National League basketball player. So basically a semi-pro player in Ireland. And he was a basketball coach. I met him on a basketball court, and he was guarding me, and I could not get a shot up. I couldn't do anything. So right after the game, I went up to him, and I'm like, I need to know you a little bit more. And he gave me my first team I ever coached in the summer of 1991. It was an under 11 team of boys. And I stayed in touch with him, worked with him several summers at camp, and then stayed in touch with him through the years. And in 2015, he said, "Hey, would you and Candy like to come to Ireland, spend a little bit of time here?" And so Candy and I said, "Sure, why not?" So he was a principal at a all-boys Catholic school, St. Mary's College, Galway, in the west of Ireland, in Galway, County Galway. Mm-hmm. And he just said, "Come on over." And we made a 2-month trip. As an online teacher, you got a lot of freedom and flexibility. So made a 2-month trip over there, fell in love with the place, came back. My late wife, Candy, graduated with her doctoral degree in that 2 weeks after we got back. And then we were back to Ireland to go help him, and we volunteered the rest of the year, school year. And it's what got me the opportunity to be involved with the Irish national basketball program that I was involved with for 8 years, and led the national teams for 3 of those on the elite performance committee. So right here in West Fargo, North Dakota, I did it. So
wow.
Networking, getting to know people, relationships, they matter a great deal. And for anyone listening, it's a very important thing. I don't care if anybody's interested in going into the sport profession, or if you're just somebody who wants to become a better person, relationships matter.
I agree with that. I think that in our Christian life, that fellowship and the relationships that we build are just amazing. I know that in the competitive arena that we operate in, sometimes that crucible of wanting to win kind of tempts us to lay aside our sportsmanship and our morals a little bit, and we get a little too intense. And I think that some of the opponents that I've had as a coach have become, as a result of that, some of my best friends. And, you and I talked in the podcast before about as iron sharpens iron, so a man is friends. And that's sort of been the saying in our friendship. And I think that's been the case in my life with a lot of guys who I battled, to try to beat them, have really made me a much better man. Do you see it that same way?
Oh, absolutely. A quick story. Of course, for anyone that's coached for as long as we have, we got stories, right? Lots of them.
Right. This whole thing is one big giant story, so feel free.
Yeah. But, I was the head girls basketball coach at Regent School of Austin in Austin, Texas, at the time a 3A Texas Association of Private and Parochial Schools member. And we had played, I was going into my second season there, and we had a tournament scheduled in Victoria, Texas, at Faith Academy, which is another smaller TAPS program. And I get a contact from the head coach, a young man by the name of Dusty Limke. And he said, hey, we're going to you'll have your games on Thursday and Saturday. And I said, Dusty, I can't do that. My school administration is not going to allow us to miss a full day of class and then go, there's no reason for it. And so what did he do? And we chuckle about it now, but he scheduled me against the 2 toughest teams in the actual tournament, Laredo Martin, which is a 5A UIL, so a public school team with they had like 1,000 kids in each class. We had I think 56, 60 kids in each class. We go in, we play them, and we beat them. The greatest victory in Regent's history up to that point on the basketball side. And then we beat Carnes City, another public school, just 3 hours later. And we ended up going on and winning the tournament, going 4-0. And wouldn't you know it, during that time, I got to know him and his incredible family. And I was in his wedding a few years after that. And, you know, I think it's so interesting how God works, how he works. Sometimes somebody's going to go, well, I'm going to get this guy. I'm going to get at him. And then, you know, I don't think I proved anything. I just went in and coached my butt off. And our ladies really played hard. And I had a pretty special team that year. But yes, to answer your question, it's a huge deal, as that example indicates. But also, I think that what I learned in Ireland and being over in Europe too, is that it is very competitive, but there's a healthier competitive drive by the folks over there, where there's not as many issues with helicopter parenting. There's not any real issues with, I mean, the way they play school ball is completely different. Yeah. So it really was I tell people all the time that if you ever, as a coach, if you ever want to just be refreshed, get on a plane and go somewhere to another country. Like I've been to Moldova, and I've worked, been over there twice and worked with Admirals Basketball Academy, which is a Christian basketball academy, loosely affiliated with David Robinson, the Spurs great dream teamer. And then, of course, in Ireland. And there's just a refreshing view where it's kind of like going back in time 30 years, where people are saying yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, thanking you after practices, as they call it, trainings there. So, you know, it was very much.
Yeah, they call it training. Yeah, they definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's a very, very good observation. I want to pursue that a little bit too. I remember in about 15 years ago, I was in an FCA. I used to be a FCA director as a part-time job here in Columbus, Georgia. And we had a young man who came to us, and he wanted to start a ministry in Ireland for basketball. And he was approaching it from Northern Ireland, you know, the Civil War that was going on. And, and based on that, he was telling us later, you know, he went over and it was very successful. And based on what he said, that basketball association where Protestants and Catholics were forced to play each other had a lot to do with creating peace. Am I right in pursuing that? Tell me if that's what you found.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, not to get into a ton of the island history, but you know, the island is separated by the Republic of Ireland and then Northern Ireland, which is United Kingdom. And that's where a lot of like the troubles happened, which is basically what Protestants and Catholics, you know, going at it, and a lot of different things. I have some friends that are in Belfast. Patrick O'Neill, who's involved with Basketball Ireland and has coached in the country for a long time, told me many stories about just what you just said. A lot of the sport bringing people together. Now, obviously, back when the Troubles was going on, it was a little different. But you know, now it's different because basketball, and I've found basketball is a sport that brings people together when people let it happen. And the same's true with a lot of other things. You know, I never saw when I was coaching over there, because I did for the year I was there, I coached at the secondary school at St. Mary's College. And, you know, I never saw anyone really just want to go at each other's throats. They played hard. They gave their very best effort. They do give a great effort. But after the game, it was completely, you know, gone. The rivalry side of things, you know, was totally different there. I'm not saying it isn't there. I think perhaps the Irish have more of a rivalry with the Brits, you know, across the Irish Sea. but for reasons that if you just look back in history, there's a reason for that. But no, I mean, it definitely sport itself brings the world together. I mean, as you look behind me, I've got all of my teams that I've coached over since 1988 on my wall in my office here. And to have worked with 300 plus athletes and coaches through the years, I can see it every day, and I can think about the impact they made on my life. And I've got, kids from high school, college, international, you name it, many different sports that I've been involved in. I think that we have to remember that sport itself it should be competitive. That's why we have a scoreboard, right? But
yes,
in the end, Marty, the most important thing is focusing on what we're going to get afterwards, because most people won't even remember scores of games. Now, me, I remember, but my late wife was a National Christian College All-American in basketball and in volleyball, and she could not remember any of the scores of her games. She cared about the people she met and the coaches she met, and the relationships she had. And I'm in the same boat.
I think that's the right outlook. That's the healthy outlook that we need in America. But I think we have, you mentioned, like parent interference, and there's so many outside factors in America now in coaching that weren't there when it used to just be a player-parent relationship. I mean a player-coach relationship without the parents. And then sort of parents kind of crept in. And then you also have these professional coaches, you basketball guys and travel ball and all those things that go with it. And they've gotten in the way of what they interfere with the real dynamic of coaches and parents. Have interfered with the real dynamics of the coach and player relationship, I think. And
absolutely,
interesting. At Shorter, where I'm a professor, we view every summer we take a missionary trip in the school, in the College of Business, and this year they're going to Ireland.
Oh, really?
That's going to be the trip. Last year was Guyana, and this year is going to be Ireland. So that's interesting.
Well, I'm glad to help.
Maybe you can coach them up a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I know it.
Maybe you get some contacts we can lean into.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and again, it's networking.
Yeah. Let me ask you this other question too. How do you see sports as a ministry in the world too? What's your views on that, Coach?
Well, I think the biggest thing with it is this: the example that we set. When I look at athletics, when I look at sport overall, all we have to look, and let's just think about it. I'm originally from Robertsdale, Alabama, on the Alabama Gulf Coast, just across the bay from Mobile. And I am and I've got a lot of folks from Georgia listening. I'm a huge Crimson Tide fan. First week was not so good. Yesterday they did better, but I think there's still the verdict out on Kalen DeBoer. but that example is a good example that coaches and athletes they live in glass houses. Everybody can see them. Everybody can speak about them, especially with social media. And that is not always a great thing, but I do think that we have a incredible platform. In the podcast, you talked about the quote from Billy Graham about, coaches impacting more kids in a short period of time than many others do in an entire year, paraphrasing there. But we have such an opportunity to do the right thing. And there are a lot of coaches that mess it up. I've messed it up in the past too. But being able to develop relationships, be an example of how God has impacted our lives, be an example of a good husband. And my late wife, Candy, she never opened her door. I always opened it for her. It was
Me too.
just doing all those things. So if we show our skill and knowledge when it comes to what we do, then people will look at us with a lot of incredible reverence. That's what happens with me when I go overseas, wherever it is. People will listen very attentively to what I have to say. And it gives me the chance to actually kind of provide them with, well, this is, can I share a little bit about, the gospel with them? I have a good friend, Todd James, in Dublin. He's been a sports missionary there. He's retired now, but he was a sports missionary there for, 30, 40 years. And he's originally from California, from Southern California. And, he, in talking with him and getting to know how he has done it in Ireland, it's been just really neat to be able to look back on my life, Marty, and think of the times I really was doing it for the right reasons, and then the times when I was doing it for your man here, me.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. Sports mission work or ministry work is all about, if we don't know what we're doing, people probably aren't going to listen to what we do or say. They want to see the example. And for me, I'm an example of a kid who grew up in a trailer house with government cheese, welfare, powdered milk, food stamps, a drunk mother, and father. My parents divorced when I was 8. He lived 3 hours away in Enterprise, Alabama. So my coaches and teammates were the folks that truly impacted my life. And so I have always looked at how much time we spend with our athletes and coaches, if we're administrating a program, they're going to see us more a lot of times than they'll even see their parents.
Absolutely.
So I think that to answer your question, it's a long answer, I suppose, but it's all about our example. And if we're godly in our walk, and we know that God has willed us into this opportunity, just like he did today in this podcast, then I think that we can do things the right way when it comes to coaching, leadership, teaching, whatever it is.
Yeah, I agree. Hang on 1 second. I got to do something about this light over here and let Richard edit this out in just a second.
You got it.
Apologize for that. We'll get Richard to edit it out. No big.
Okay.
That happened at 24 minutes into the broadcast.
Yes, sir.
I really appreciate your answer about when you said that we're so visible as coaches. Everybody sees us. Sometimes it's not what we say, it's what we do in this profession. What do you think about the coach as a Christian example? You just mentioned your coaches were able to get to you. That's true in my life too, where the youth pastor in my church when I was young could not. But when the coach took me to church, it changed everything. Is that what happened in your life? How do you see that?
Yeah, it totally did. And for anyone who really wants to learn about Marty's background, go listen to our podcast together, because it's a very fascinating story. And Adipolgus and the gentleman basically meeting him and his friends on the street corner and saying, "You want to play baseball?" Yeah. So for me, it was learning. My first real foray or entry into sport was in 1978 when I was in my parents hadn't divorced yet. It was in the spring, and I went outside in our neighborhood, and these boys were throwing a baseball around, and I was just enthralled by it. I said, "Can I try it?" And they gave me the mitt, showed me how to do it. And then right after, I just begged my mom, "Please take me up to the Crest store and let's buy it. Can you buy me a mitt?" And that's kind of where it started from. And after that, whether it was Cub Scout leaders, We Below leaders, my Boy Scout master, Dennis Middleton, who led me to the Lord in 1983, or my coaches, there were people, like I've said this before on my podcast, that each one of us, we don't arrive where we're at. We stand on the shoulders of giants. We stand on people that invested in us. And it just seems natural that we would invest in the lives of other people, right? So for me, I had, I had coaches and some teachers through the years that really impacted my life, as far as just saying, Timmy Rice, little bitty Timmy Rice, wants to learn how to do this. I got cut from the middle school basketball team in 1983 at Robertsdale Middle School in my hometown of Robertsdale, Alabama. And the varsity basketball coach at Robertsdale for the high school team, Jack Byerly, said, "Come on, I'll have you be my manager." And I served as his manager in 8th and 9th grade for both JV and varsity basketball. And literally that's what launched me into wanting to do this. And he's actually back at Robertsdale now. I just started back there again after being a Division I coach and junior college coach for many years. But there are a lot of people that have made an incredible investment in my life that gave me the chance to, I've traveled to 26 countries. I've been to every state in the United States. I've coached in 5 or 6 different countries, something like that. And, lived in 9 states in the United States, where I got a driver's license, and in Ireland. So, without sport, I never would have met my late wife, Candy. I wouldn't be living in West Fargo, North Dakota. That's for doggone sure. And, it's been an incredible journey for me, but the journey didn't get started without somebody lifting me up and helping me. And I think there are so many times people think they do it by themselves. There's no person that ever does it alone, ever. We have to have people that we can, that will hold the ladder for us to climb to greater heights than we ever thought.
Absolutely.
That's why we should do the same.
So hence the name, Holding the Ladder Leadership, where you came from. Ours, Step Up. There's a similarity in both of those. Saying that there are people that have stepped up in our life. They've helped us climb a ladder. And that was our story. And that's the story of so many athletes in our society. I had a kid one time I coached named Andre Taylor down at Buena Vista, Georgia. And Andre was a great athlete in high school back in the 90s. And we had a doggone good basketball team. And I was assistant coach to one of the most transformational men in my life, a guy named Leon Johnson, who was such a good mentor to me, taught me so much. We're still good friends today. Well, Andre, when we had tryouts, we had so many good players. We had to cut Andre, and we knew he was a good athlete, but at that point in time, he was not a great basketball player.
Right.
So he came the next day and said, "Can I just hang around? How can I help? What can we do?" So we made him the student coach, not manager, student coach.
Right.
And he practiced with us. He was there every day. One of the greatest kids that you've ever seen in your life. And when the season began to wane down, we were playing a team that was just super good. And we had a flu. The influenza hit us. We only had 7 players. So we asked Andre, can you dress out? You're on the roster. Can you dress out? Yeah, coach. And so we got 12 rebounds, scored 12 points against the toughest team we played all year, which made me think maybe we should have never cut that guy. But to make the story short, he's been the coach of the year in the state of Georgia twice. And just, again, relationships are everything in our life. And when you run into a person like Andre Taylor, it makes you know that you're in the right place. God puts you there for a reason. And looking back on my life, just as you do, see so many of those things where God just blessed me and blessed our players in so many ways and changed lives. And I'm a better man from having coached young men and young women in the state of Georgia.
Oh, well, and obviously all the state championships and the different teams you've coached and the 5 decades of doing it, I think that there are so many lessons that we gain. I think that there are so many times where we look at coaching and we think that we're teaching the young people, or if you're coaching at the college level, your college student athletes who are a little bit older, that you're leading and mentoring them. But in so many ways, those young people hold a lot for us. And I've realized that as I've gotten older. I'm 55 now, and some people say, oh, well, you're still spring chicken, still young. Well, when I look back on it and I go, well, I've got a lot less time in front of me than I have behind me. But I look at the people that really invested in me becoming a great coach. It wasn't just the people that coached me up. It was the people that I coached too. And, I'm very fortunate because I just accepted a head boys JV basketball coaching job at a brand new classical Christian school here in Fargo, Capstone Classical Academy. They're going up to 10th grade this year, and I'm going to be coaching them starting December 1st. Which is the first day in North Dakota high school basketball, which is pretty late. But to be able to have that opportunity to do it again and to coach scholastic basketball again and to not only impart my knowledge and understanding of the game of basketball to my student athletes, but to also be impacted by them. I think that it goes both ways. I think there are a lot of times some coaches have a very big head on their shoulders and they don't think about it the other way. Some of my former players that I stay in touch with, which is a lot of folks. For me, Marty, I get calls about, hey, Coach Rice, I'm getting married. Coach Rice, we're having our first child. Coach Rice, my dad has cancer. Coach Rice, I have cancer. Literally, that happened like in a week's time with a dad and a son who I was very close with. One beat it, the son, the father, Frank Phillips, late Frank Phillips, was an Ohio High School Hall of Fame coach at Scrim Falls High School outside of Cleveland. But those are the things that we don't think about a lot of times when we're in the throes of battle and we're getting our teams ready through our practices and scouting and everything else. It goes back to relationships, just like you talked about.
Yeah, it is, and I do think that that the young people in America, everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people are critical of Generation Z kids who are the bigger part of my student body. I teach now.
Right. Yeah.
I just don't see it. I see them every day, and I have a lot of hope for Gen Z. I see the opposite. They're different.
Yeah.
The way they consume information and digest it is definitely different than it used to be. No question about it. And the questions they ask and their outlook on life is different. But they're smart kids, and they seem to have more of a purpose driven view of life than a lot of kids I've taught in the past. Their view on life is to make a difference. And I see that, and I'm very encouraged by that too.
Yeah,
what do you think, Coach? You see it that way?
yeah, I do. When I hear people talk about the new generation, as you know, Generation Z, and that there are people that come up with these assumptions, right, regarding laziness or not being focused or attention to detail driven, or all these things. Kids are kids, people are people. It's all a question of how are we going to meet them where they are. Like,
Yeah.
I know we have these little huge computers in our hands, like,
Yes, sir.
and what I've found interesting is that part makes me want to do a research study on it, was just the we have the greatest technology in the history of the world, and yet some of the worst communication. But I think that there's also an assumption problem where folks say, well, kids just aren't the same as they used to be. Actually, they are the same. It's just they have more to grab their attention. They have more things that grab their attention, and you have to provide them something that grabs their attention. And if that means that I'm being, I coached a club team this past summer, mid Minnesota basketball, bunch of small town kids from over across the border here. I'm right on the border of Minnesota and North Dakota. And they were just, it was like throwback. It was so amazing. But they are also very attentive to their phones and all these things. I think it comes down to, again, bring up relationships. I mean, we talked about that a lot today. I mean, if we develop a relationship and actually meet them in the space they are as much as we can, then, then I think we are doing our part to become part of their lives. And those kids this summer, I got lots of comments from parents and even some of the kids after the season, the summer, about how much they love playing for me. And part of it is that I was a different coach than I've ever been in my entire career, where it was all about, not that I didn't develop in the past, but it was just different. It was about relationship building and really developing now what we can do in the future, and so on and so forth, and helping them become better players when they go back to our high school. So, I mean, it's all about relationships. Keep going back to that.
It sure is. I think that we have to coach kids' heart. I think a lot of coaches just want to coach their feet, their brain, but it's all about coaching their heart. And as people, they're all different, and it's even wrong to say that Gen Z, that everybody in Gen Z is alike, because they're not. Just like in millennials, they were not alike. All the generations that we've been coaching, everybody's not the same. God made us all different. We don't treat everybody alike. We treat everybody fairly. And because everybody has different receptors, different needs, and different things motivate those kids. And it's our job, through the relationship we make with them, to find out what it is that makes them tick, as a player and as a person. And that's what we are. Right now, I'm teaching this class, just like you have, about coaching methods, right? And style. The first thing we confront is the philosophy and style. Philosophy is your why. I'm not telling you anything. I'm just, all the listeners, we're just having this thought, right? Philosophy is your why. Style is your how, your method, your toolbox. And so everybody's got different tools in their toolbox to tighten bolts and cut limbs and all those things. And I think if we use the same approach for every kid, a lot of kids need direction, but
Yeah.
it kind of depends on what their needs are at that particular time. The situation and the player determine what their needs are, how far along they're developed. Are they beginners? Are they intermediates? Are they elite players? And we as coaches have to match what we do with what the players need. Let's go back to that question about different methods for I don't know, but different methods for different needs.
Yes. To comment on that, I think well, for starters, we have to understand actual learning style and stuff of our athletes, but we also have to know what motivates and know their personality types. Utilizing Myers-Briggs, using Keirsey temperament sorter or something along those lines to figure out their personalities, and being able to utilize tools to actually be able to reach. Like when I was at Grove City College, we had a 6'9" engineering student who didn't like being coached hard. And then we had a point guard 6'1" point guard, who's now a very good high school coach in Ohio, who we could kick him in the butt. It was just the way it was. You have to know how to meet them there. The other thing too is, as coaches and as sports leaders, today's the Gen Zs want you to, in my opinion, my experience, you need to teach Socratically. You have to ask open-ended questions to get them talking, to get them thinking. Critical thinking is such an important part on the court, field, course, wherever, court. You have to be able to critically think and understand situations and whatever by asking open-ended questions instead of saying, okay, this is what we're doing, go. We have to be able to say, this is the reason why we're doing it. Here are the objectives for why we're doing it. And then, go from there. But if we don't understand, a lot of coaches in that, and I was guilty of this in the past too, didn't really focus on each individual's needs. And, if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, get into some really high level stuff here, but like every person has a set of needs that need to be met. And we have to understand how to meet those people where they are. I brought that up earlier. But if we don't understand someone's personality, then we're not doing our part as leaders. It's just the bottom line.
I agree with you. I think we need to have you back, and we need to talk about that very thing right there about coaching style, and let that be. I mean, we could write a book on that, right? And,
yes.
But it is the art of coaching is your style, and again, it's relationships. Just like we've said all night, it seems to be the theme of what we're talking about is player-coach relationships, and how that the bottom line to everything we do is that trust relationship that we build with our players.
Yeah, and I want to say this too. This is an important thing. I had a high school teammate, high school colleague and high school teammate of mine named Steve Burgett, who passed away 3 days ago back home in Robertsdale. He's 55 years old. And, he'd had some chronic health issues and stuff. But he was the most amazing youth sport athlete, just dominating back home. And, I heard about it, and I thought about how much of an impact he had on me by bringing me along as a little kid. Like, I was so much smaller than him. I was the same age, but smaller than him physically. And about 3 years ago, I reached out to him, and I wished him congratulations for getting engaged to his would become his wife, Shelley. And he was, during the communication on Facebook Messenger, he was encouraging me the whole time. And encouraging. And we have so many people in our lives, relationships, and stories. I believe that coaching is all about the power of the story. I think each one of us have our own stories about, specific games or specific people. But in the end, the relationships are going to matter more than any championships. It's going to matter more than, when my late wife passed away back in January of 2022, all my former players, most of them are reaching out to me. I mean, I got almost 2,000 messages from people all over the world. And, that's what matters. It's not whether we beat Spring Hill College or whether we, won a high school championship or whatever. That doesn't matter. What matters is down the road. Like, I think that, yes, should you give your very best effort and try to win the games you schedule? You're darn right you should. But in the end, and there's that brotherhood, that sisterhood, whatever, of being on a team that you'll always have. And that's what the pictures in my background, I mean, that's what I look at. But I also look on the background here, and there are about 13 or 14 people on this wall that have passed on. So, there are people that were my coaching mentors, like the late Dr. Bill Elder, or former student athletes, or, other people. And I think that we have to remember that it truly is more about, you've heard it so many times, more about the Jimmies and the Joes and less about the X's and O's.
That's right. I couldn't agree with you more. I could not agree with you more. I've had almost 30 kids who I coach who passed away, and it's such a sobering fact to know that you are an influence in their life and how you act in their presence and the influence that you have on them and their thinking and on their faith.
Yeah,
is beyond words. And every game, just the scores of games, trophies, all those things, they just, as Coach Rick says, they just gather dust, but relationships, they are with us until God takes us home. And so I just feel like we've got to stop now, but I don't feel like we even barely scratched the surface of the things we needed to talk about.
Sure.
So will you promise me that you'll come back and let's have a themed conversation on coaching methods? And
sure.
And I want to say something about your comment on stories too. Jesus told stories called parables. Worked for him, and it'll work for us too, brother.
Yeah, well, if you were to ask my late wife, she probably tell you right now, even if she were right here in the physical presence of us, she'd probably say, Tim has too many. But
no, buddy, I love hearing them, and I know this. The Gen Z love stories too. I've actually had my class stop and say, "Coach, tell us a story before we leave." I swear that's happened, and they love to know about things. So,
yeah,
buddy, I appreciate so much you being here tonight. I feel like our audience got a lot out of this. If you're a coach out there listening, this is a guy you need to tune into. Dr. Tim Rice, an experienced leader, a servant leader, and he's the kind of guy, if you're a young coach, that you need to build a relationship with and let him mentor you and let him tell you some of these great stories, because they all matter and they're all relevant in our lives. So Dr. Rice, thank you so much. And I hope to see you again In about 5 or 6 weeks, we'll have you back. How about that?
That sounds like a great, that'd be great for me because it'll be getting cold here in North Dakota and I'll be indoors anyway.
Okay, brother. Well, thank you so much. And to every coach out there listening to our show, step up, make a difference. These kids need you to step up in their lives. Thank you so much for listening.